I feel like I'm falling behind. A client said that to me in a Q&A recently, alluding to how she thought that by now in life, she would have achieved so much more. It transported me back in time to when I had just been in business for a few years. All the entrepreneurs I knew, they seemed so much further ahead. I'd hear them talk about their 5-figure months and their 6-figure deal or 7-figure deal, traveling constantly to speak, calling the Miami airport their home office. I hadn't even broken even. I just felt so far behind them. And then I'd look at my friends who were still in corporate and I'd see my own savings dwindling and I'd think I was so far behind them. And I'd pretend like things were going great because I didn't want anyone to know how crappy it felt. No matter where I looked, I felt like I was behind. What I wish I'd understood back then was that I didn't want what any of them had. So I was using the wrong measuring stick to begin with. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly why comparing yourself to others is killing your progress and your possibilities of truly finding happiness, joy, and success. So in the Q&A with my client, when the question came up of how to deal with this feeling of being behind, I could see she was in the same trap I'd fallen in. This sense of falling behind can only happen if we're living in comparison land. And when you live there, it will eventually destroy your business. And along the way, it can destroy your self-esteem and your sense of progress. Comparison is kryptonite and it will rob you of your power. It's so easy to fall into this trap, especially nowadays, since everyone on Instagram is for sure posting how happy they are, how fit they are, how wealthy they are, and how self-realized. And on LinkedIn, they're all getting promotions, they're getting certifications, and they're climbing that corporate ladder fast, while you're there burning out your adrenals just trying to catch them. And this sense of falling behind is not just in your career or in your business, it's in your life. I totally get that. There was a long time when by now I should have, that was my daily mantra. It was probably my hourly mantra. By now I should have bought a house. By now I should have hit 6 figures. By now I should have saved up so much money. By now I should have been able to hire a team. By now I should have had kids. My gosh, that was a tough one because everyone was on a bullhorn about that one. By now. I repeated that in my mind every single day, which only created a burden for myself of being perpetually behind in life. And so I asked my client, I said, what is your measuring stick? Falling behind who and based on what? Falling behind everyone was her answer. And I totally understand the feeling. But the objective reality is that I know so many people who are just waiting for the kids to go away to college so they can get divorced. Is that the marriage you should have had by now? I have friends who have huge mortgages in cities they don't want to live in. Is that the house you should have bought by now? 90% of people who reach out to me as a client feel stuck in a job they hate going to every day. Is that the career you should have had by now? Choose your measuring stick carefully. Just because Instagram calls them reels does not mean they're real. The truth is, you're not like everyone else, and it's not a good strategy to try to be. So let's get back to this feeling of like you're behind in business. There's a very important business lesson that I learned from Simon Sinek a few years ago. And I don't remember if it was from a keynote or from one of his books. But here's the dilemma. If it's not clear to you who you are in business, what you're about, what you're out to achieve in the world, it won't be clear to the market either. And when the market doesn't understand that you have a unique, a compelling story, a very specific problem you know how to solve, That is when they think you're just like everyone else. You're just another one in the bunch. And you get into the game of competing, which leads you to react to every single thing your competitors do. And then you start a back and forth with the competition, which is what Simon Sinek calls the never-ending game of whack-a-mole. Have you ever felt in business or in your professional career like you have to react to what everyone else is doing because it's a competitive environment? They lower prices, you lower prices. You launch a new product, they launch a new product. You offer some unique financing, they offer that same unique financing. These things can only happen if instead of being unique, instead of being real, instead of being you, you treat yourself like a commodity, as if you were just like everyone else. A solid brand alleviates that, but not just in their minds, first in your own mind. This reacting to what everyone else is doing, it's because you haven't defined who you are. And it's the exact same thing that's happening when you feel like you're falling behind everyone else in life. And it takes us back to the questions of what is your measuring stick? Falling behind who and based on what? If you're comparing yourself to someone else's result, you're limiting your own possibilities. You're limiting your achievements, your happiness, your capacity to create. You're setting a ceiling for yourself at what they're posting that they've achieved. What if instead of measuring against their supposedly perfect life, you measured against your own idea of what excellence looks like for you today? What would you create today if you were truly honoring the things you really deeply want to achieve in your life and doing them with excellence? Not what other people get on a bullhorn and say you should do. What would it look like if you were fully self-expressed in your work? What would you be making time for? What would you be saying no to? What would you be going all in on? It all comes back to having clarity on how you want to show up in the world, and that is branding. You don't need to be competing with other people. Just show up with excellence as yourself. If you feel like you're on this hamster wheel of trying to keep up and just doing more, ask yourself this simple question. What does me living today with excellence look like? You're not late because they seem to be further ahead. In fact, there is no late because the only moment you can take meaningful action is now, today. Act on your own timeline instead of measuring against theirs. What can you do today to move closer to where you want to go? And how can you do it with excellence? Your life is happening now, not in some future where everything aligns perfectly. So if you feel like you're behind, even behind the schedule you created for yourself, live today with excellence. Define how you want to show up in life and who you want to be. And do that. Honor that. That is branding. And when you have a strong concept of who you are, there's no kryptonite that can steal your power. Here's what you need to remember. First, that feeling of falling behind can only exist when you're living in comparison land. And when you live there, chances are it's just a story you're telling yourself based on someone else's highlight reel. And it probably isn't real anyway. Second, when you're constantly reacting to what everyone else is doing, you're telling the world that you're a commodity and that there is indeed nothing unique or special about you. You end up playing what Simon Sinek calls the never-ending game of whack-a-mole. Third, the only measuring stick that matters is your own definition of excellence. Not theirs, yours. What does showing up with excellence look like for you today? Fourth, there is no behind because there is no universal timeline that we all have to follow. The only time that exists is right now. So use today to move closer to where you want to go. And finally, your brand is about being so clear on who you are and communicating that through everything you do with excellence. When you know who you are, comparison loses its power over you. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, I'm falling behind, or by now I should have, or feeling down on yourself because of what you saw on someone else's Instagram reel, ask yourself, what would excellence look like for me right now? In whatever you happen to be doing, and then do that. I'm Melissa Marchand, helping accomplished professionals build consulting businesses they love. If someone you know is stuck in comparison land, please share this episode with them.